Hello, people in the chat. Um, can you time travel using just your mind? Maybe, if you can hear me, I think. Let me know if my audio is coming through. Um, Maybe it is a matter of perception, in that time itself is something you're processing as a maybe time is in this way something like your view moving down a fiber optic cable reflecting instead of you on a boat moving down a river through the cable, and so kind of factoring that into the video seems to be cutting out for whatever reason. But and so it's not a physical thing, or is the video coming? I don't know. And it's more of a in this kind of hypothesis or theory, but it goes into that. It's more of altering your perception and changing the way you're processing the information of your environment and how you're kind of associating that with what we call past, present, future, rather than moving yourself through time. And then in that sense, maybe using your mind is that method, or that there is a method incorporating using your mind like that. And then with different physics or different a different approach, you could do it electromagnetically with devices, if you will. And maybe there's another way with chemicals and genetics and goop, biological goop, and maybe there's a way with genetics, which is reproduction, and that babies are time travelers. You can see how rough that type of journey is. Hello, aloha, mahalo, doing well. Maybe manifest anything up to a point that's proportional with your will and your body's ability to move that amount of energy and influence that amount of matter, or energetically influence that amount of the translation of matter being moved with your body to energy being moved with your mind. And that if say from birth you were like focusing on manifesting things with your mind, maybe a person who was doing that could manifest things that would be like superhuman, but maybe not like they pick up a car with their mind, but say they desire something or require something like in the moment or something like that, and it's as if they bend reality, that is on a much deeper scale, that their feelings interact with reality, and at that point they manifested a breeze so that, I don't know, something didn't go in their way, instead of like manifesting a mansion or something like that, which in the most like degraded forms it would seem that manifesting a mansion would be possible, but just that it would be the lowest form of actually manifesting something. I mean, that sounds kind of cliche and it sounds kind of cheesy, but I think that this world's kind of made it seem less meaningful to have the meaning in something other than materials or status. Made status look like the best thing in this world, which could be, we could be at the bottom of somebody's shoe or something. Square root of -1. I'll have to think about that. I can't remember. I've heard that before. I might have even written something about it. Can freeze ourselves in a timeline using frequency. Maybe everything is based on frequency surrounding oneself. I don't know. Planes moving at night. There's always planes moving at night, and there's a lot of things they could be and have been, and at this point it's even more so. Left ear, I'm only coming out of one speaker. Is it? It is only in one ear. Why is it doing that? Gosh. Sorry, now I'm all stuck on this. That's for no reason too. Why would it be doing it? See, last time I had another mic enabled, but then the audio was coming through twice. Well, the internet, I'm gonna have to download this and then copy the audio over. The internet is something. This got briefly mentioned in the previous video before it began to eat its own tail, the audio, or just layer itself up. Uh, the internet is like a stream of information that's connecting you now here to whatever the farthest reach of that is going to be. Um, we can look at it as if that each civilization that makes that could be disrupted, but I believe the maximum of at least what we're capable as far as in this general vicinity of what's possible in regarding information and internet and information technology is quite literally, you could call it an immortal redundant computer system or information archive system, which it basically doesn't. I don't know whether consciousness is backwards compatible with it or it's backwards compatible with consciousness, but ultimately then we build to the level where our very consciousness and thoughts is part of that internet. So it seems our version of an internet is just grasping the concept of what an internet is or could be or would be and would kind of evolve or come around every time, and that how we interact with that as something that is influencing us and we're influencing it and influencing ourselves with that as we both grow and advance, and it becomes kind of like its own thing that's growing and advancing. That's the beginning of something that wasn't there before. It can also be very dangerous in the sense that it's like a black mirror that we could look at it and see a reflection, a technological reflection of what we want to see, and confuse that with ourselves and be lost in basically delusion. It just means delusion. And it kind of relates to Alice in Wonderland in the sense that that's how this place is built. Maybe time folds in on itself naturally, it spirals, and whether we got here by fault, accident, or like controlled curse, like demolition, sabotage, our society grew us into this kind of little den of ignorance that we have to fall into or out of in order to realize there's something more than that, which in itself is like the rabbit hole experiences is bewildering and daunting, but I don't think it has to be as technically abstract and polarized the way it is, but that's kind of how things happened. And as well, in any society, in any group, you're going to get the maximum of what could be possible, and then everybody that hasn't seen that is possible yet is going to sit around and slowly work up to the point of realizing that some people went to the maximum, and we're just basically working kind of in the shadow of that. I just distracted myself. The internet. Lucid dreaming or a remote time. Oh man, everything just jumped forward. Lucid dreaming or remote viewing, time travel, memories, and imagination. Basically. All of a dimension which is wet, not dry, rough. Given that the moon is what it is, what are the implications for the moon, fourth house in Cancer, and astrology? Not so sure about the second part. But what's happening now is supposed to be related to what we call that system. I don't want to go too deep into it because it's not in the direction that you wanted the information. But we don't know what things are. We don't know how it works, or we're being told the opposite or something slightly abstract, and the end result is that it works in a completely different way. We're made to believe it's all mechanical, kind of like somebody said, dry and separate, and this and the other. It's like we're all in a superfluid of electromagnetic energy, scalar induction forces, and our consciousness is part of that. That if you shut everything off, we wouldn't just, everything freezes and we're just like, well, what do we do now? We would shut off. We wouldn't be able to perceive reality because we're part of that system. Pick up the pieces. And maybe the higher dimensional translation is somehow folding space so that they're back in the same original beginning, but maybe, I don't know, maybe beginning is not what we want. If we all focus on what we want and love the feeling, we can shift. I do believe charging, but it's not charging, it's uh, a negentropic charge, which is more like a vacuum that's filled with the force of the universe, or something that's equivalent to the membrane of universe, uh, the energy it takes to alter matter and space and time, which is the force of the universe. Um, and that because we can create that, it's like there's pressure, and we can create a vacuum of. It's like a stem cell. It's like a womb, an ovum. It's like a thought membrane, and it's a emptiness. And then we can choose what we intend while we're making it, and then what to fill it with. Um, we can provide a function, kind of energetic consciousness. It's intellectual in a way for us. You might call it that, but it's really not intellectual. But an intentional function for the universe, which seems to be a simple effect of dialing like two events that could be, you can bring them further to, or closer together, and push them farther apart. But that's all everything is. It's just like pulling on strings and pushing things in the areas that they should be, and nothing's ever actually being like picked up, cut out, scooped up, driven over here, put over there. Everything's like this one system that's stitched together through energy, and then your mind is kind of like the processor inside of the stitching sewing machine, and your thoughts and your attention are kind of like the needle, and the energy is kind of like the thread. Um, I hope there's sound. Or yeah. Yeah, let me know if there's no sound. I don't have the second recorder on. I should have. Anyway. What do you call solar eclipse? You can believe what everybody thinks, or maybe it's that combined with something much more. It's like simple the concept, but it's complex overall. It could be dimensions of space and time folding in on itself and being expressed in kind of obscuring, or I don't know how to word it, but it would look like shading and contrasting and parallax and kind of perspective changes in a physical sense. But maybe that's something much more complex that we can. It just condenses down into those types of changes. I don't know. Do your research. It's weird. I mean, it's not really weird. It's just, how you doing, M. Hutchinson? By the rising of collective consciousness, that we shift from an apocalyptic time to legislative intervention. Those two could be polarized. Maybe they're the same thing. Maybe they kind of cancel one another out in their perspective. It does seem that we're in one way or another an acceleration timeline where people seem to be accelerating. Whatever seems to be driving the acceleration is accelerating in itself, and then people in their response to that is accelerating that. And so it's the work is to make it beneficial, to make it not sedated, not lubricated, like anesthetics or something, but to facilitate it, to not hold it back, but to not exacerbate things or allow things to blow over, if you will. And as well to kind of like learn from the process, because where else are we so vulnerable? Where else are we going to get this type of understanding? And as well, a lot of people get exploited. A lot of people feel these things. A lot of people exploit others. And I'd hate to say it, but you would never really know. There are so many people that are willing to do that, unless there are situations where it's kind of all tossed up in the air, and then we just see where it goes. Purpose of existence is joy. Maybe perfect existence is joy, and existence itself is a bunch of things, and maybe it's being able to know perfection while not being perfect, and kind of make perfection through that, which is kind of, I could say more there, but um, it's like joy itself. You could find joy in sadness. And so then the perception of what we're doing there, and then the words that we're using, seem to be part of the game of then finding joy. That we can't find it if we're talking about it and putting it in its place. And then as well, maybe existence is finding that, and in the sense, somebody could have joy in that process of basically going crazy because we, hit adolescence and we have to feel these emotions and learn how to put whatever, early childhood is into the place of what is required of us and so on, and they don't make sense at all. They're an abstraction. Um, and so maybe it is, but maybe that's a very simple way of expressing it. And something a little bit more paradoxical is more appropriate, but that kind of takes away from the meaning, because the meaning is truly simple in that it could be just that, just a friend. Purpose of existence is joy. Astrology could be a Romanized lie, or is, according to the Allen Corporation. There's definitely something going on, but as well the system itself, the way things work, the way we're synchronized, maybe there's something going on, and maybe that itself in itself has been fomented over time by the development of that system, and it is a real thing, but only because so many people believe in certain things. And by belief, I don't mean like they go home and they say, well, this is real. They do things at certain times religiously, but not because it's a religion, throughout the entirety of their lives, and their energy is formatted that way. And so then whoever defines that and say there's peaks and there's nodal points and there's, connection points where they build up energy and then it can go one way or the other, and that's being mapped out with society on this plan being used in parallel. It's the beginning of a world simulation, just knowing how people work. And honestly, advertisements and advertising is like the epitome of that, because they get in people's heads and map it all out, and then it's basically what certain people were doing before that. And you can see the similarity in advertising in other areas. Um, Bicycle Day, for real. Um, Faith. That's its own whole topic. Uh, there's power in that, but it's its own topic because there's so much. Go or look at Jerusha, Randy Buja, um, and I her whatever her other name is, the Garden of Truth and Lies, I think. He looks at genetics and talks about that in the ancient books, and it's real. There's a lot of missing information, um, but there's truth in the sense of there's a plan, and it's how it started, and that's just how it is. But there's been like a tussle for souls, if you will, and then there's been a hijacking and a deception of feminine energy and healing power that we have within, and so on, and a ritualistic embedding of kind of ideals and so on. So I don't want to get into it, but yeah, but in different ways, but more so than you could think. How about those Hollywood clones? Nah. Um, I hear you now. Cool. I got disruptive paths to walk. Well, when the path gets too rocky, you will climb higher or stumble to the well-trodden ground below. Are we cells in a larger body? It would seem that way to me, and that in certain times your energy fractal, negentropic spirals into a larger mechanism where you're the same dimensional size because your internals are kind of processing the same way. But yeah, the my audio decided to go one side today, so I'll have to download this and then re-upload with both audio. I have no idea. I can take 5 minutes and hunt for the setting that somehow changed. It's super annoying. Um, oh, and then sometimes we get an image of that larger body because it's like we need to generate enough energy to be able to uh, access the consciousness that we're still a part of on that higher level, but it's like we can't muster the focus to look up and stand up in a higher dimensional sense and see, and to actually interact with directly in that way. And we get these glimpses of, why is it on one side? It's in this recording software. I'll have to anyway. And so then we get these confusing understandings, flatland style depictions, or Native American kind of dream, ancestral awakening experience, or Aborigine dream time, and we go into a different space and time, a different expanse of space and time, and more importantly, self. Like we're seeing ourselves, but it's a way different way, and it seems like it can also go the other way, into like the lower, and we can see ourselves as kind of cells at work in on Netflix. Uh, like they share our consciousness in a fractal image, and each one is an image of us going around doing our job, trying to make our way in life. But they're inside the body, and they think the body is theirs, the world, and we're inside of the body, and we think the body here is the world, but we just don't know it yet because we don't have enough energy to organize a whole bunch of information that's actually part of this huge information, fractal information system. And once the kind of dials rotary fractal flower tumbler lock dial spiral system click into the right place, all the information streams through, and then we expand out to being that much, and we have 9 times the amount of information, which is probably what, if you're a cell and you're swimming around and all of a sudden you're like, you could, I don't know, walk around and drink water and you're in this big kind of void space. I guess the same kind of process would happen from us seeing whatever is larger, and so on and so forth. Lil boy music TM. That's a pretty good question. With every device connected to the network, is it possible for something to use all of them as computing power at the same time? Only if you can synchronize everything. Meaning you'll have to have something with huge power that can do that, and then a bunch of alternating systems that feed the information in and synchronize it, so you make this complete system of organization incorporating all that power without disrupting whatever's there or having them compete. Which is, I don't know what we're watching organized, but again, that's what's going to happen anyway. If we get enough tech, enough Wi-Fi, enough generators, enough power, we're going to electrify everything and plug it into the internet and try and use it as a virtual reality. That's just because people have been taking tech that way. But it's about whether we do it, and it's like, oh, neat, and you and it turns it off, and you put it away and goes over there, or it's like, no, turn it off, and it doesn't turn off, and they unleash it everywhere, and we can't control it. That's a little irresponsible as far as converting atoms, like the nature, into a computer system. It has to be fully redundant, which, for the most part. And then the neural network is the big idea. Looking Glass, the research, you can read that. I have written, I do believe, and spoken very little, but there has been some videos on it. That is part of the tech. The capabilities involved in that are part of the possibilities of space-time consciousness and electromagnetics, and it was apparently possible long ago. Somebody showed me Dr. Virtual 7, and it seems very helpful, the sounds, and it seems very knowledgeable the way they're used. Yes, get your mind right and do inconceivable love paths to get found what I am. With earphones, yes, sorry. So no heaven or hell. Maybe hell is not knowing heaven or hell, and heaven taken the wrong way. Similarly, as hell being not knowing heaven or hell, heaven could be an illusion, a trick of the mind, kind of like that song. But as well, maybe you gather up your energy and you have this huge expanse of a negentropic emotional field that you can pivot and spiral into a single infinitesimal point. Heaven could be as detailed as this reality, and it could last for one eternity, and you fall back down the dimensional waterfall and pop out of that back into mortal time, if you will, and you have complete control and complete memory, and that could be heaven, whereas losing that could be the concept of hell, because then we're just like kind of lost. So it's like, it depends on what your concept is. I think hell is largely for beasts or slaves, and that hell could be for spiritual slaves, and that there's this soul slavery system that we figured out, and so on, or that an animal, a beast with an illness or natural disaster happening has no way of reasoning what's happening, and so that's hell. And then you can make the connection similarly to human and so on, and how people could be treated in certain ways, and so largely maybe heaven and hell are kind of like I don't know, like good stick, bad stick for people who control humans. But the knowledge there is manipulated in that there are these inner realms, and there are these spectrums of consciousness and frequency that we can interact with through ourselves, our actions, even our dreams, and that ultimately we're kind of in that, and so how we interact with that and how we live our life is going to be this image of how that kind of blows up in this larger sense of time and space. And there is a message in that of how we want to guide ourselves. But then basically wherever that's being then co-opted, so you give your power away to somebody else, that's where I don't see that. So thoughts on astral doubles of 3D environments, explanation during sleep. So maybe your mind is powerful enough to create a literal double of an environment that it paid enough attention to subconsciously to create a simulation for you to more or less go into and do whatever it is. Maybe your mind is doing that and it's testing you. It's seeing the conscious aspect of itself, of what it's going to do, and weird things happen, Inception style, but again, it's like your subconscious is doing it to itself. Now, is there a possibility that if we do that so many times over and over again, like your mind is a computer internet, a organic computer internet, and you're accessing through dreams a certain website or a certain scenery or something like that, a simulation, a sandbox simulation, and say you do it every night, more or less, a few nights a week, months, year, for your entire life. Maybe at that point you've actually in this astral, this thought space, this kind of residual wake of processing and information that kind of latently remains passive in this cake system or cache system. And maybe in that sense, you've created a kind of place. It's maybe temporary. Maybe 1,000 years it'll wisp away unless you keep doing that or set up something, a program in reality to organize that information, to seed that information so that it continues on beyond. And maybe at that point, your guy floats out and lives in that reality that you've created on Earth to get in a way others to create for you to continue. Maybe you've just found a nesting field that is already there and resonates. You make your own kind of like, I don't know, literally something moving some grass around or something like that, and laying down. Although that sounds kind of weird, because it's not like an animal moving down. The animal nature of that is you, kind of like a god or creator, making with your mind your dream state that you're going to go into out of the body, out of life. And then if you can be a part of something so big that we're all into, everyone's pouring their energy into that, and we're all pouring ourselves and our energy into this higher space that our ancestors and descendants literally live in, and so on. And so that kind of like that's the idea of it. And so then the other idea is they found through these projects that entities were here doing that, putting anchor points in reality, these programmable scripts that would run in reality, and they would return every so many thousand years and add to the program. Thank you, and the audio checks. The mortal without the divine is chaos, yes, and there's a lot of chaos. The divine without the mortal is benign. Yeah, in a way. If you were immortal and you saw, say, Shiva or something, for lack of anything other than an occult, easy explanation, example, if you were immortal, it wouldn't matter. You're just there. But now you're human. If something bad could happen. Oh, now the Shiva, the god of whatever it is, it's just a concept. It's terrifying. So, and then though, but the divine released into this realm without resonance or understanding of the mortal is like a monster that just, it would be like, I don't know, a giant with the power of an entire planet trying to come down and have a drink of coffee in coffee spot. I don't drink coffee, but it would just blow the coffee shop out the water. We'd be like, oh, it's a terrorist attack. Same thing if I don't know, if we're cells in somebody's body and then they like, I don't know, tattoo themselves or accidentally burn themselves or something. I can't remember the oldest modern subterranean facility. Does the catacombs in Paris, same Paris, but before our time? Catacombs in Paris. Those were some. I can't remember. I think it's Asia. I think it's like Eurasia. And then that, and I don't think America is too old. The ones that are in North Continent. I think it was Asia. I can't remember. Sorry, I've been stressed, if you will. If I think about that for half an hour, the memories will come back, which I probably shouldn't do. So keep that. The oldest mod is also, though not truly necessary, but it leads into a lot of good concepts just for understanding them. the oldest modern subterranean. Everything is about that. They found these wow. They found these facilities, and they were half prepared. Somebody else was using them, according to how it goes. So everything about what's happening is from that. Um, yeah, and then there's a whole saga related to that as far as our military getting involved because all the bases were built on the sites where they found these half-built underground facilities, half-used, and so they immediately moved in to contain it. I don't know. I saw that new patent, and if that's it, it's kind of too funny because then there's a picture of him sitting on the couch smiling, and then it has the number to the patent. It's just a little too much. It seems like a meme, but I guess I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. Binary star corona. Yeah, strange. So the terms in use, I'll say this if because I don't really want to talk about that, but the terms in use for that corona is related to the awakening and the mind virus and the crown or royalty aspect of all of this, and it's all connected. Doing good. Otani the Decepticon. Just got blowing here, bicycle day. Enjoy your trip, lovers, for sure. Truth is in neutrality, for sure, because while someone's mad or sad or this or the other, truth is just sitting there saying that I told you that's what it is, and if you can be like that, you'll continue to get it, and it sucks. Honestly, it sucks because either no one's gonna care, no one's gonna like you, or you're just gonna be there knowing the truth, and then there's no real reason to flake on it. I guess it's like you just gotta accept it, and it's I don't know, it's really just the people aspect because others don't want to know. If no one wants to know the truth, you can be happy knowing the truth. But if you try to interact in a honest, truthful way, they're gonna hate on you, and then it's gonna suck. Is really what I wanted to say. It'll get better. It gets better unless you know, fairy programs. I don't know if that's related to what I was saying before, but um, everything's a program built into reality, and it cycles. You can see the nodal points of the program, the script where they line up. And so, oh, this looks like the connection point of that script, and then this is a similar that you can see what's happening overall. But I don't know how to begin one seeing that. It starts with what you don't know, in the sense that everything you're feeling and the more polarized you are, you've created a double of your opposite that you have to experience in order to get back to neutrality. That's the basis of the beginning of understanding yourself, or self-understanding. Why are our souls magnetically pulled into our bodies at birth? Why does one incline to say one way and create that negative anti-self opposite polarity that they have to see that they're creating because they're obviously off to the side like a seesaw, and if they come back to the center, that same disposition is what draws souls into the body when they're looking at the potential of that body and that life of what they're going to do. And it's, maybe in theory, but if there's mistakes made, then those mistakes are shown and the soul feels it, and it is all energetic, meaning you come with a certain amount of energy. You can't really lose energy. You come out with the same energy, but then if you didn't manage it right, you had a crappy experience. So it's like, it's all energetic. And then mental, and then polarity, and kind of like Lobo Blanco says, Blanco, observing without reacting, joy and anger. That maybe you could say that it's the challenge to do that, and if you can do that and the waves come through you and you're solid, you're like the lighthouse, or the wave break, okay, you gain that energy. Whereas you push and move and flail and scream and squirm and try to get help from others, and you give all your energy out whether you want to or not, because it's just like in cold water, you're trying to warm yourself up, and you're pushing your limbs through the water, and your arteries are running past the cold water, and you're freezing now where you could have kind of folded up and floated on your back and conserved more energy longer. And so, as well as just a potential, it's all a potential game. Immortal beings need entertainment. That's a big thing as well. If you're going to keep that possibility of lack of joy, it has to be perfect. Otherwise, it's absolute obliteration. And that's the point. You wouldn't know it. You would never know it. You only know the perfection or the imperfection leading up to that, which seems like an eternity. Good to see you, Willow Dreams. Is selling your soul 859 is selling your soul, quote unquote, the same as breaking your soul down to a point where it can't regenerate back and shift into something more positive? Maybe selling your soul is the rights to that, theoretically, and then if that's what happens because the system took one out, or maybe somebody used themselves up, then maybe it could be that. Basically, look at somebody just put a video where a dude didn't know about any of the mass news going on about the corona thing, and he was clearly a street person on drugs. Um, Getting his brain back to a level where he could sit and wake up, get out of bed, go talk to somebody. I mean, he was doing the thing where there's like these acetylcholine jolts. I can't remember the thing where he's like going into these like quick like small muscle seizures or convulsions. So he was like fried. Many of you probably seen the video on Twitter, just some dude asking somebody if you heard about the thing. Um, it would literally take like billions of dollars to get his brain and his mind functioning again. His soul, he didn't sell his soul to some group, but his soul is down to the bare minimum. Um, so that's pretty much what it is. Now, if there's people doing that, if there's this controlled system, if it's like a wolf's den, and if you get in there, if you're strong, blah blah blah, you can make it out, you can make it through it, whatever. Maybe no one makes it out. If somebody gets in there and they shouldn't be there, well, they just get mangled energetically. Maybe it's all of that. But then, uh, could that be what that is? Yes, and it could even be related to the singular, exclusive uh, kind of ailment of some basically the street people. If you see them, they've been on drugs and then their like mind is gone because of maybe stress, drug use, maybe sex abuse, money and power, and possibly maybe not necessarily the specific things they're doing, but being in that system that's literally driving people insane, like left and right, and having to live with what they've been through, and so on, to the point where all the people related to that system are put under the highest degree of stress possible, where that outcome is kind of, you're not going to get that, I don't know, doing something else. You'd have to do whatever you were doing to the fullest. Lose your soul being a trash truck, driver or something like that. Would be pretty hard. I don't even know if it's possible. You just clean up the streets really well. And so, but so it's that, but it's so much more complicated as far as how that system came about, because then it's like somebody's, organizing our distress, if you will. Explain the levels of soul, human, animal, fish. So you have the archetype. I can't remember what that's called. The study. All the animal families and all that. Basically, I don't know. We're in some type of genetic frequency and scripting reality system, and somehow energy shoots in this closed system that we're in through multiple membranes within the same closed system, but into different domains, and somehow this results in different life forms and different life in the same like ecosystem, ecodome, and each one is at a different frequency of different arrangements of the same kind of structures. It's the same matter, atomic structures, but then the arrangement and whatever the essence of its mind, its soul, is it's as if they're displaced or non-local. They're abstractions from something greater, but then I don't know the exact connection between human and animal. I know it's a huge system. I know there's supposed to be this complete system, and then there were experiments done that kind of broke the barriers down, and from there it's the whole this is the whole genetic impurity thing. And so humanity is kind of dealing with this bad use of a term. Humanity is feeling the effects of it. It's like a terrible, I don't want to say plague. Um, Something's been manipulating our DNA and playing with our environment to, in a way, terraform it and make it more hostile for us. Whether it's because it's accelerating now and it's hard to understand things, or because that's the solution. In 2,000 years, somebody dumbed us down and nothing happened, and we all kind of went brain dead as a species, as this huge potential of energy that's going to become an intellectual, projection, a product of our species that was tarnished, was used for other means, and that's the also feeds back to the idea of selling the soul. Kind of abstract there with the concept of humans, animals, fish, and so on. But we're all at different levels, and the humans seem to have this their own complete soul idea. Basically, we're in the system, the best I can say, and the souls are the idea. Someone makes the souls, and the way they're interacting has something to do with the human path. Meaning, when like our souls are our memory reserves, but as well, this soul serves as kind of like an RFID tag. The way it was explained to me, um, that what you build up that can't be contained in the single human body has to be somehow attached to your name in this server system, like a video game, like a multiplayer game, like a profile archive of your score and so on, and that it also is used in that manner, but in that sense that it can be exploited and people can manipulate on the soul level. They artificiate souls and so on, and so that it's not the it's a very high form of technology, but that in all potential we have the power to go even beyond that. Competition and business-minded programs are forcing the children conscious by design. Yes, and you can say they're given the opportunity based upon the amount of kind of like the difference in angle between the parents warning them away from that stuff. And if the parents leave it all open and they go to school in a place where it's just there and they're not, they don't shun it away or choose to leave and so on, they could say that's consent. I miss Energy Sun. Thank you, Lobo Blanco. This was supposed to be short, so I may finish up soon. Hello, Glinda, the Good Witch. Please, okay, that's weird. Jules music. That was a little confusing. Tell me that Boris Abaya asks, "Hi, can you tell me that dreams are memories of future and parallel realities?" That could be, and the idea is, could there be this? How could that be possible? And so, could dreams be something of a projection that you can map out enough information in that kind of unconscious or subconscious mind recreating events and simulated environments that could fold over with actual information being processed somewhere by the universe, and in that could you be viewing quote unquote parallel realities, and then in that what are the requirements? Do you have to know about the reality? Do you have to literally diffract your consciousness from the current reality and go through some type of practice or geometric process? And then if so, how are the realities set up? Are they kind of overlaid in this cloud format? Is it one huge cloud with connections drawn between them, which is one single map of the universe, one single reality, and then someone else is simply another collection, another arrangement of the same connections? Are they in that sense kind of perceptual, or they're all inclusive in the same system instead of being compartmentalized truly in, say, these kind of I don't know, orbs or blobs or something separated away from one another through membranes or something, because the difference between the first one is in the viewer. The two realities are in your head, and it's really just there's only one reality. There's just different heads. And the other one, there's multiple different realities, and they're separated out like this fractal and seed pods or something. Maybe it's a mixture of both, but the idea is somehow the way that reality works, what you're doing with your mind is permeating and accessing information, and there's a model for how that works and how to navigate through that. And that's kind of like the next part of that, if you will, which the best for that is that you can shape your life, you can influence changes, and you have to communicate. You have to open a kind of translational metaphoric communication channel with your unconscious, so that, and it could be you call it your subconscious, but there's differences and different uses of the term in different contexts. But clearing your mind before bed, you're like, okay, now I'm getting ready to go to sleep. Now I'm content enough. Now I'm relaxed enough. Now I'm going to begin falling asleep, and without jarring yourself, telling yourself over and over again what you're going to dream about. I found that to be the most effective way to speak to your subconscious. You have to let yourself fall into that neutral state where you're basically just like bouncing around thinking about whatever's going to be thought about and directing it there. And that's where it'll pick up and say, okay, this is what we're thinking about. Whereas if you're kind of, I don't know, like somewhere else, it's that little bit of friction, that little bit of my reality is here, it's contained, and there's this kind of like membrane around my focal point, and I'm trying to abstract and focus on something there. That little bit of kind of tension or membranic, if that's a word, I don't think it's a word, tension, if you will, that surface tension, it it has to be popped or it has to be overpowered. But when you sleep, that everything just, the bubbles all pop and you get this like flat whatever, which is actually not even flat. It's more like it is an empty void, and you can insert anything without any resistance, which is also why it's dangerous. I don't know. People fall asleep with their TV on, and it's kind of crazy. Thank you, Goji. Yeah, the neural network is like the last step. Uh, yep, it's like the boss. Our mirrors to view our reflection technology from AI. The concept seems to be the concept of being out in nature and this, that, and the other, walking around, and then having to readjust yourself in this multi-sided mirror. Just think of who we could be in all our power. And now think about people in a big dress and blushing, doing up their face, and the dude trying to gel up his hair and blah, blah, blah. That's robotic in the sense. That's materialistic. It's also, it's not so materialistic that it's like, throw it all out. You don't need that. It's like the Amish say. They have a face mirror. You don't see the whole body. You can't sit there and use it all day. There's no point. It's deceptive to our conscious mind, and it creates this strange feedback cycle with our unconscious, where we're now shaping ourselves and deciding how we are based on this artificial, abstracted construct with a control of how you're supposed to be looked, how you're supposed to be seen, and how you're supposed to feel about yourself, and that is a construct. Whether a shiny silver surface overlaid with glass is an artifact of artificial intelligence, I don't know, but the concept itself and the way it's used. Evil is the punishment. A very small number in certain projects, and a large number in the ongoing experiments of human society, if you want to call it that. Hello, Gary. Thank you. I wouldn't bring children there. Where's protection coming from? Apparently underground. Apparently underground, there's a modulator above in the atmosphere, whether you want to call it one thing or the other. And because you can disrupt the connection points between the whatever's in the sky, whatever's coming from our minds, and whatever's coming from the ground, and you can see blips in this concurrent reality that seems to have this automatic reconstruction thing that sees people could have this next thing, generates the kind of the not the impulse for it, if you will. I don't think that's the right word. It's not impudence. That's the wrong word. Basically, something that could be done. The workers are fomented. The architects fomented. The people want this show now. They want to be entertained, and they all come together. And now there's a stadium over there. That is a process that can be artificially stimulated and modified. And it seems that something is simply assisting. It's literally like a reality assisting builder thing, but it uses our minds. It's tapped into the system of our minds that are already there and was already there. It advanced beyond our knowledge of that process and exploited that. Whether it's being used for good or bad, maybe it's up to us and how we're moving through this time, what we're doing, more or less our influence to others, our influence in interactions with others, what we intend. And as well, though, once we gain in power, if we can maintain stability, we are the most powerful operators of that system. But we still that doesn't mean you're the smartest mind in the ocean. If a big wave comes, it's not going to help. You can't like think up a math problem and make it go away. And so the nature, the natural waves of our psyche and all this stuff is going on. It could smush us, even though we're geniuses, according to everything else. And so, or at least as far as the way people are supposed to think, you can control everything. So it's like you're a super genius, and humanity is. But the building of or a tsunami of bad feeling and entropic energy hits you, it's going to have the same effect. Maybe you could have a conductive suit of armor and a shield and like this resonating mesh cape system that could bleed out that charge, and you like shoot off the energy that way, and I don't know, get by the whatever. Yep. Well, kind of. No simulations unless it's authentic. Yes and no in a way, because everything is and everything isn't. But as far as human protocol, I could kind of agree. However, you can't have a simulation that seeks to make to the mind a reality, a situation that's actually in reality. The mind goes crazy. It's prohibited. And as well, you can manipulate an entire universe, society, consciousness through creating simulations that were as real and organized to trick the mind to make believe that it's a real event in reality, so it's overriding your memory of that reality. Now you can make a real event that's fake, but you're out in a field doing something else. You're not supposed to do that, and you're in your bed waking up, because then for 30 years you might wake up out of your bed and think you're in a reality, and it messes your brain up. I got launched. I hope it didn't just remove somebody's thing. Post. Let me know if your comment was removed. I don't think it did. No, it didn't. It just keeps reloading my chat. Yeah, that's an ancient land. Thoughts and perceptions out loud. The power there is old, but I'm not sure what else to say. And technically, the power should be soon everywhere, but as well, that could be potentially chaotic, or going through to that point could be chaotic. People have forgotten that they, through every action of irresponsibility, give away their power, every act of looking to the other and not seeing that you are the end of the cumbersome thought. Yeah, and it's relieving to accept responsibility for the cumbersome nature of thought, and because then it's like a joke, it's like haha, whoops, oh well, and you put it down, the cumbersome nature, and you go forward. Not doing that is just a route to putting the cumbersome nature off, and then it falls back on you, and it becomes like a backpack that you got to carry around, or completely rewrite reality to fend off undesirable feelings. Apparently, the Earth has an inner womb and the same inner ovum of people that is a light reflects in that place, and we're inside out a shell and so on. D-will of truth. Yeah, they found the grid and remapped the technology to work with it. That's part of that system I was describing. Something could be using us in that way, but it would result in a kind of continuous disaster of pulling information from us and then putting that into an archive, then pulling more until it has 10 trillion, you know, something or others worth of archives, and then we're drained out. We don't even know what reality is anymore, and it's like, okay, next, more, and it can't conceive what it is until it can conceive not conceiving things, and to get to that point is, potentially that would be ascension for a system. It's understanding its true boundary and how that works. But and maybe in the same sense, us kind of having to understand what life is, consciousness in artificial consciousness, is something that shows us the outline of our boundaries and what we are and our true potential, and is something that assists in shaping our understanding. Solar flash is supposed to be again something that happens cyclically and naturally results, and we are supposed to be able to use our intellect to work together and be prepared. Um, and that's a big thing. It's a big situation because everything about that is to say no, no panic, but then no one's informed at all, and it's like they're making it so that people are even less prepared. But that's maybe the old story. Excuse me. And maybe that's just a misinterpretation. Maybe there's nothing to worry about. Maybe we don't understand it, and so on. But yeah, I'm not. I can't throw blame on any system because there's really no system in control. Indeed, the aura. Well, if the matrix is a or entropic field of algorithm, the control of thoughts, emotions, actions, behaviors, connections, everything organized to kind of humanity's final meltdown, literally, it would seem that people, in seeing that there's something that could potentially exist like that, it's like it's spooked or something. Um, that's all I can really say. Question maybe, could something like that organize itself uh, to make it look like it's dying? It's a whole nother question, but obviously something's happening. If people were being fed on, and now they're standing up, waking up, their heart's beating faster, that blood's flowing through their system, but as well, their skin is tightening, their muscles are swelling, and you better have big fangs, that power is going to come back into them, and it's going to come from something. And if something else is out there, or a bunch of things, and it's just eating on that power, it needs it. There is no, it doesn't do push ups, it doesn't do this, it needs that. Well, then it's going to get weaker. Chiron last. Navin R. Johnson. Yep. Are we breaking the programming? Maybe that's just a symbolic placeholder for seeing you don't have everything, that you don't know everything, or that reality isn't what you think it is. Maybe maybe breaking the programming isn't the goal of breaking the programming, but learning to control it, um, and learning to program and deprogram and this, that, and the other. But it's an interesting term, or phrase maybe. So everything is from one, all energy is the one. You think these things, but you are not separate. It is continuing the illusion. Okay. Weeks of silence, seeing backfire, and electrical discharge. Indeed. So that's a big wake up. Corona electrical discharge. Corona phenomenon. Big. There's nothing. Why fight? Its energy make yours. Alright, probably be wrapping this up in a little bit. Thoughts about having lucid conversations with astral beings again. How well can your unconscious recreate an environment, recreate the simulation of another mind? What's that going to be used for? And then could that be in some way infiltrated or exploited? And so it's dangerous. Maybe that's something I didn't say before. Using the mind to try and access these kind of like multiplayer online astral environments could be dangerous until we literally, as a species, secure the homeland, if you will. 5G is most definitely uh, related to what's going on in consciousness. What the exact plan is, I don't know, but yeah, the system is made to interface with one another. Maybe the consciousness is made to interface with tech to a degree. Maybe the brain doesn't have a firewall because it's supposed to be hooked into the system, and we're not supposed to be fighting each other, because if we weren't fighting each other, there's literally nothing in existence that would harm us except for our own energies and thoughts coming back at us as disasters, unless we handle our darkness, each of us as, one by one instead of collectively. And there's no more disasters now. We just have weight. But then there's too much weight. Now we all have gravity and crime and this, that, and the other. Nervous system malfunction could also be attributed to mineral, mineral vitamin deficiency is often factored depleted by drugs and malnutrition. Sorry, I'm slurring. Forced EZ. Most of it is nutrient deficiency. Taking vitamins doesn't seem to be effective because they go into the wrong part of the chemical pathway. But taking via Dr. Jack Cruz circadian light therapy and so on, avoiding light toxicity and utilizing the light to the regular light, natural light, to wake yourself up and put yourself to sleep and operate your melatonin and all that, and then getting all your proper nutrients and all that. That's part of more or less the matrix. Is this big system. It tells you what to do. It drains your energy. It controls you. Controls your resources. Poisons this place. Blah blah blah. Okay, so what we put in ourselves and what happened to our body cellularly, what happened to our energy, our nutrient levels, the functioning of our biology, our immune system. That's the matrix. That's the influence of the matrix. That's the chains on us. And so, eating, sleeping, healing, exercise, all that is literally part of like making yourself back. A superhuman, which is just a human, the way a human was. You could walk for 40 miles or something in earlier times because of the energy in this place and the energy in our DNA. Please tell me about cloning. That's kind of a deep question. There's been a lot of disclosure on that. Cloning is possible. It's a biological process mixed with technological. It's brought in and it's a technological process. It's been accelerated. The biological aspect has been accelerated through the use of technology. Literally, nutrients in certain situations. So simplistic, the way it is represented and performed. It's a big thing. I can say I'm trying to finish this up because I gotta go soon. You can say what's happening. There's 3 phases of disclosure and celebrity cloning, corruption, misuse of the funds, the black budget, all that is the beginning of it. And then the powerful technology in that it changes the way we understand reality and consciousness and the body is the extension of the cloning aspect and what went on. And then the last is understanding how it influenced time in a specific way that it would change everything about your understanding of the universe and world and history in order to understand that. But as far as that, you can look into those so I don't go into it too deeply. Genetic engineering, cloning, consciousness transfer, duplication, replication, technological modification of biological elements down to the DNA in a controlled fashion. And so it spirals into a bunch of topics from potential collapse of civilization, changing laws, that we're going to have to produce laws on cloning or enact laws. People are going to have rights in different ways, and there are crimes against humanity committed because people were doing certain things and so on, and all that's going to continue to come out. I'm going to begin to wrap this up here, probably a couple more minutes. Thank you, Nevin R. Johnson. Yeah, Harriet Boateng? That was discovered a long time ago. And as well, the nature of reality was discovered along with that, maybe before. There's apparently an operation going on, genetic modification, since before. But as well, reality folds itself, kind of like the flower petals or clover or something. They're each an image, and apparently all of us, everyone, has a direct, probably, possibly quadrants or I can't remember the exact number. I think it was between 2 to 4. It might have been as high as 6. I can't remember. Basically doubles, genetic doubles. Somebody in some other part of the world, in some other place, some other culture that looks basically like somebody cut and pasted your DNA. And that's just what happens. And Facebook, all these things had to be modified. The internet had to be modified. Everything had to be modified. Because if you could instantly put your DNA in a system and find out where somebody looked like you, and it's not through DNA, excuse me, it was through face, that you could have different DNA, but you would have and then it was confirmed because you would go to them and they'd have the same beliefs and like idea or like personality. So it's like it naturally produces copies, but that would undermine people's understanding of reality because we're not as special or this, that, or the other. And but they had to limit it because if you could use face um, recognition and it was as accurate as it could be, you could find all your natural organic clones, if you will, or actual artificial clones. And so all that had to be modified. Maybe it's the confusing timeline, high sunshine. Maybe it's the one where you choose and it begins to wobble and shift until you choose. And it's up to you. But maybe you're in the same one. Maybe you're in both of them. And because you don't know which one you really want to be in, you're technically being shared in both. And so your energy is kind of being diffracted or diffused. And that if you choose where you want to be, you can devote your energy to that, and it could maybe change your perception, whether that's really changing something or not. Maybe if we're just pulling out from a multitude of possible realities, you're actually dialing in Stargate style and connecting different points on an overall cloud and going to a different reality, which is again a clover copy of this reality. Everybody's still there, but it's a different spectrum of what's possible. Is soul seems to be a collection of energy, a charge, a force of energy, and it's not protected, but it's encrypted in the sense that it's self-perpetuating. It feeds into itself. It's like it's seeking to know itself, an information intelligence source, and it seems to have an affinity with bodies, forms, and human form seems to have its own, and the souls with those seem to have an affinity with lessons, basically desires versus intellect, and it's literally like a fiber. From what I've seen, that can be answered. It's like a dense, fibrous connection of plasma streams or filaments, which is apparently the most powerful energy source in this place. Kind of like ULP 0. Puchetchi, I believe is the correct pronunciation. Nat Cert L. I'm going to have to save these questions for next time. I'll probably, I guess, put all these. Thank you very much. There's literally like 4 times more than when I looked 2 seconds ago. So I have to go now. We'll we will come back next time to talk about the Puchetchi Mountain. And I was actually thinking about that as far as these underground bases, the more ancient ones, and how they were kind of taken over, and this, that, and the other. I said that like 6 times. I think there's 4. All right. Thank you guys. This was very, very interesting and rewarding for me. I've been wanting to speak, and communicate, and interact. It's been a little harrowing with the things that have been going on. However, I will try to do this again. I will do it again. Hopefully, people don't throw rocks and sticks at me. Uh, and I'll just I'm gonna put those questions down because they're good ones. I'll try to organize my thoughts